So you thought France was about wine, cheese, luxury, fashion and romance, and then you land in Paris and you are lonely, unable to communicate, anxious and homesick. Well, there's actually a term for it. It's called Paris syndrome. It's a sense of disappointment people face when Paris does not meet their expectations. And ask my brother about it. I was evicted from my home when he landed in Paris, and I have made an entire video about that. You can go check that out later. In this video, I'm going to share with you the culture shocks that I have faced and also how I coped with it. And most importantly, like every video that I have on this channel, you'll have my analysis on the culture shocks, why it is like that and why it is not like that in India, and so on. Alright, let's get comfortable. I would have loved to have a cup of tea, but since I don't have tea anymore and I avoid it, I'm going to just get comfortable on my couch, and you also get comfortable and we'll get started. Okay, now the culture shock number one is that France is a more individualistic society, which means that people prioritize themselves as individuals rather than as family members or group members, whereas in India it is more collective society, which means that people prioritize the family identity, the group identity more than the individual identity. So they plan activities and actions based on that. Initially we would do everything in a group, but then obviously conflicting schedules and you end up doing things by yourself, which for me was very depressing, and it made me feel very lonely because I've never done all those things before, and I had always lived at home before that, so that was a completely new experience for me. And I remember this one time I wanted to go to a nightclub, and there was no one else in my network who wanted to do that activity on the same day that I wanted to. And someone suggested, I think my ex-boyfriend then suggested, why don't you go on your own? And for me that was embarrassing and humiliating to go to a nightclub and by myself, go to a party by myself or try to have fun by myself. And even the concept of eating by yourself, many people are in India, if I say that if you want to go somewhere, why don't you go on your own? They're like, no way in hell I'm going to go to a restaurant by myself, because it's seen as like you don't have anyone to hang out with. So, but then I found a way to cope with it. I asked some of my friends how they managed, and they said that they watch stuff on laptop while eating. For me also, it was a big issue that I had, my then boyfriend was right in the dorm next to me, and still I would end up eating dinner alone. But then I found a way to cope with it, which was by watching movies on my laptop. And no, this position is not that comfortable, so I'm gonna sit like this. Yeah, and the next thing is not the most profound culture shock, and you may think that it's a superficial one, but literally the first thing I noticed when I landed in Lyon was that the girls there, they were wearing clothes with the bra strap showing. So they were wearing these racer back tops with the bra straps showing. And yes, I had seen that on TV a couple of times, but I'd never seen it in India because it's not something that you would do. Even people hide their undergarments while trying to dry them or buy them, I guess. And there is so much shame around the concept of having clothes for your private parts. It's like you have private parts, everyone has almost the same type of private parts, so what is the big deal about it? In fact, lingerie is something that is part of fashion. It's not something to be worn underneath in France and something to be hidden and ashamed of. It's very much celebrated, and therefore people are not ashamed to flaunt that. So I think for Indians, if they would see someone like that in India, they would be like, this person has no shame. But if you see it from that perspective of it being fashion and not something to be ashamed of, they have a very valid point, if that's what they're thinking. This is my analysis. Now the third culture shock is that of fake smile and insincere greeting. So what I mean by that is that, okay, now my background is someone that I am someone who takes everything almost literally, and if I don't mean something, I will not say it. So I assume person who's saying it or doing some action, they actually mean it. So if someone smiles at me, it's because they actually want to smile at me, not because it's considered politeness. But in France, it's considered to be politeness to ask a stranger down the street, how are you, bonjour, greet them, and ask your colleagues, how are you, in the morning, and all those things. But I realized over time that it's often not meant, in the sense that they really don't want to know how you are. And the funny part is that when my mother visited me, it was her third day in France when I was having my graduation ceremony, and she had grown tired of the fake smiles by then, and she was like, why are they doing all these fake smiles? And I understand why she was frustrated, because it puts you, the person who takes everything seriously, literally, and genuinely is invested in other person's actions and words, you will try to reciprocate that because you want to, it's what you would do, and then you feel embarrassed because then you realize that person didn't mean it. And I'll give you an example. What happened was, I had an Italian colleague who, we were having coffee in the balcony, and another colleague came and asked him, how are you, which ça va? And by the time he moved out and went out of his way to answer that question, she was gone. And he was so angry. He was like, this is what I don't like in Italy. When we ask someone, how are you, we actually wait to see how that person responds. So this is exactly what I mean, that when you, someone who is invested and you take everything seriously, and then another person doesn't, and they ask you Sava, and you answer, and by the time they're gone, so you're like, okay, thanks for asking. So that's that. And then comes food. Now this is where I encountered the concept of eating salad as dinner, entire salad as dinner, or entire dinner being salad, which I'm used to eating salad before dinner. It's part of Bengali cuisine. At night we have cucumber, onion, tomato. This is like a side salad, after which we have the main dinner. These things kind of act as an antecedent, if I'm not wrong, because our dinner is heavy. But in France I saw that there were these people having salads as dinners, and I thought maybe that's how they are so skinny, and I adopted that belief, also adopted that practice, because A, it's convenient, and also because I became very conscious of my body, which is what I mentioned in another video, how being in France made me very conscious of my body, which I already was. And I adopted that belief of having salads, and I continued that even when I was visiting family in India. I would do that, which is have salad while the rest of them ate Indian food. And I think that was, looking back, I wouldn't do that, because if you're not having the same food with your family, then it kind of feels alienating. And until very recently, until I think 2020, I was eating salads for dinner. So almost like 8 years of having that habit, and I enjoyed it because it was simple to make. But now I was like, enough of eating salads. I really want to have chapati and sabzi or chicken, the usual Indian dinner. So that's what I'm doing now. Continuing on the food spectrum, you can tell I'm a foodie because a lot of my culture shocks are related to food, because, well, I'm a Bengali and food is very important, and it's associated with a lot more things than just nourishment in our culture. So food, what happened was, in student parties, you would go and you would be expected to bring your own booze and also your own snacks. Now when I say snacks, they're not even like chicken kebab or prawn pakora or chicken wings. They are your nachos and your chips. So for me, in my mind, a party is equal to food. And that was a big shock, where I would realize that, oh, I'm going to a party, so I don't have to make dinner or eat dinner. And then I realized that, oh my god, these people are just having drinks, which I don't even consume. So it was like a complete non-party for me because I didn't see anything fun about eating chips when I was really famished. And another very, very weird thing is that when you go for birthday parties, suppose your friend invites you, then you go to their birthday party, you are expected to pay for yourself. This has happened to me not on one, but many occasions. And in fact, I thought, okay, fine, we are students, so maybe that's why people are paying for themselves. It's quite an expense for someone to pay for, say, 15, 20 friends of yours at a restaurant. But I also went to a 31st dinner party at a working couple's house, and she had invited her other friends who were also like early professionals, like they were into jobs, so they were not students anymore. And at the end of that, she divided the cost of the total dinner by the number of people, and we all had to pay a certain amount, which I wasn't ready for because, well, I didn't. It was my first ever kind of being invited to someone's house, like a party kind of situation. And I wasn't prepared for it, so I had to write her a check because I wasn't carrying cash. And I got used to this, but then there was this one time I was on the phone with my grandfather and mother, and I was telling them that I'm going for a friend's birthday party, and I happened to tell them that I'll be paying for myself. And you should have seen the amount of anger my grandfather had, because he was like, you don't have to go to such a party. And you might think, why, what is this extreme behavior? The thing is that, again, like I said, it comes from the Indian mindset, and especially, like, I cannot speak for all other Indian communities because we are so many. But for us as Bengalis, like, hospitality is the number one thing. Like, we will not eat, we will give the best food to the guests, and we will go out of our way to make guests feel at home and be served and fed. Like, that's the whole point. We just love feeding other people. And my grandfather said, you don't have to go to such a party. And I can understand that culture, right? Coming from this culture of, guests being God and you have to give them the best food on earth, this, I can imagine, can be offensive. But I also understand the French point of view, which possibly is that it will be quite expensive for a student to pay for someone else. And I think this mentality also carries over to the next point, which is that people, like, when friends meet for drinks or they meet for a party, they usually have dinner at home, which is really weird, because the whole point of spending time together is that you eat food and then you have a party, but then you have dinner at home and then you eat outside, like have drinks outside or have coffee outside. It felt very weird for me. I think the foundation for this kind of thinking and behavior among French people is that concept of equality. I think the thinking behind this is that, let's say there are 4 friends and 3 of them are okay with a certain restaurant, but the 4th friend is not able to afford that restaurant, so they prefer to just eat by themselves at home. But I understand the concept. At the same time, I think this whole eating by yourself at home to save money or to be equal ultimately leads to this whole isolation and loneliness, which I was talking about. Now, taking a diversion from all these food related points, which are very big for me, is what I noticed in romance and or rather dating and relationship, not romance, dating and relationship, is that there is no formal asking of, will you be my girlfriend, will you be my boyfriend? They just get together and they call themselves a couple. Whereas in India, I don't know about now what is the situation, and I'm not very much who's aware of what was happening in India at that time. But my expectation is that the person who, before you become officially girlfriend boyfriend, there is a question of, will you be my girlfriend or will you be my boyfriend? I had that expectation from my then boyfriend that he would ask, and I was pretty disappointed he didn't. And my European friend who was from Romania was like, no, that's not the kind of question you should be expecting. That's a very serious thing. And I was like, yeah, I know, I'm not talking about proposal for marriage. I'm talking about just officially knowing that, yeah, we are on the same page. But for them, asking means getting married. So what happened was, another friend of mine, I was talking to her about her new boyfriend. I was like, wait, how do you know he's a new boyfriend? Because you guys generally don't ask each other, you just hang out. She was like, yeah, actually, now that you're asking me, I'm not quite sure. So I think that's where the confusion can arise. The other culture shock which impacted me not once but twice in France and once in Switzerland was getting pickpocketed. And within the first month of me getting there, I had got this BlackBerry because everyone else was getting it and we could communicate with people across the world. But anyway, I got that, and within a month, even less than that, it was stolen. And we were basically a bunch of friends. We were hanging out by the river, and there were these guys who were coming and speaking to us, and before you know, my purse was stolen. And what was most hurtful is that these people were talking to us and were hanging out with us. They looked like us, young people, and then we were even, like, my friends were even trying to talk to them to give it back to us, convince them, and they failed. For me, that was a very upsetting, and how do I say, I felt betrayed. I was like, I have invested in this place, in this city, in this country, emotionally, financially, and this is what it does to me. It takes away my phone. Like, why would you do that? And to think of it, it's a developed country, you wouldn't expect these things, right? And even in Switzerland that happened. Like actually I was coming back from Switzerland to France. It happened in the bus. So imagine Switzerland, one of the richest countries with the highest per capita income and all of those things, this is what happens. So it's quite jarring. It leaves you with a question mark in your head of what exactly is happening here and why are people picking my pockets when this is a developed nation. But yeah, I mean, obviously just because it's a developed nation doesn't mean that it will not have its share of pickpockets, but it's just not the kind of experience you would want, especially when you are new to a country and you don't know people. You have to do all the rounds of the police station, go file, speak in a language, do all the paperwork, then find a way to find a phone. It can be very unpleasant. Want to know more culture shocks that I faced in France? Then go check out this video and I'll see you in the next one. Thanks, bye.